Welcome to another edition of the Recruiting Scoop. I'm Jarret Johnson, and this time we're talking Texas Tech basketball. The Red Raiders, it seems like Chris Beard has, since he's been in Lubbock as the head coach, they've been one of the best recruiting, or one of the best programs overall, and certainly on the recruiting trail. And this year is no different. Their best class yet. I've already talked about, I think when they signed in November, the bulk of their class, 5-star Murray Burnett, 4-star forwards, a pair of them, 6'7", Micah Peavy and Chibuzo Agba, two guys I'm really excited about to go with Namari Burnett. When they signed in November during the early period, it was a top 5 class. I think now it's around 10 or 11, depending on the day, it fluctuates. But they've added some pieces here or there. And now the Red Raiders are looking at, I believe, the finishing touches. I think they're looking to find a legitimate big man who could come in and play. Of course, Russell Tachua has entered the transfer portal. He's leaving the program, it appears. And so the Red Raiders are looking for, a true athletic big who can do what they need, both on their perimeter when they're switching, but also, of course, as a rim protector and a rebounder, and a guy who can, dunk on people's heads when need be. Look, they were in the running for Matt Harms. Matt Harms announced on Thursday, the 7'3" center out of Purdue. He chose BYU over Kentucky and Texas Tech, which I think surprised some. Word started coming. At first it looked like, it's going to be Kentucky, but then word came out, the night before that it looked like it was going to be BYU, and indeed it was. Harms chose BYU. So now let's take a look at some other guys that Texas Tech is interested in that they've reached out to, and I think Coach Beard really wants. The first guy I want to mention is Marcus Santos Silva. He is a 6'7", 250-pound power forward who's played at VCU. He averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds last year, a game last year. He's a very productive player, and I think he can check a lot of boxes for you, do a lot of things that you need from a big that maybe you don't have on the roster right now. He certainly brings experience. So, he dropped a top 6 here, and Texas Tech made the list along with Georgia, Maryland, Ole Miss, Penn State, and Arizona State. So that'll be interesting to watch. Once again, Texas Tech, they seem to be, anybody they're interested in, they're at least in the top, the final group. And once again, here we go. For Santos Silva, the Red Raiders are right there. And, he would be an amazing pickup. So I think if you add him to the roster with what you already have coming in, I think you'd be really excited about Texas Tech's prospects of winning both the Big 12 and making another run, for a Final Four. So, if Santos Silva, for whatever reason, falls through, look, there's still backup plans. I think here's a guy that, if for whatever reason Santos Silva, falls through and Texas Tech is unable to sign him, I think the next guy would be Vlad Golden, or maybe even, I don't know how they're looking at the roster necessarily, if maybe they're looking at both, but it's my opinion that they're waiting to see what happens with Silva, and then moving on they're moving on. Their backup plan is 4-star center, Russian center, Vlad Golden, out of, you guessed it, Putnam Science Academy, where the Red Raiders have signed a big each of the last 3 years. Starting with Malik Indigo, then Josh Mballa went on to Buffalo, of course, and averaged a double-double for them last season. And then, most recently, Chewy, who transferred out. So Vlad Golden's a 4-star guy from Russia. He's a legit 7-footer. He is definitely the type of rim protector, and a guy who, junkyard dog. There's a bunch of highlights of him dunking on a lot of guys, especially even Americans in international competition. He's from one of the biggest club teams in Russia. In fact, the biggest out of Moscow. It's a guy that Tech's obviously been familiar with for a long time. And you look at Putnam Science Academy, all their highlights. They have listed him with Texas Tech since he's been playing for a long time. So the expectations is for him to sign with the Red Raiders. So we'll have to see how that goes. But, if you get one or both of those guys, you still feel really good about your roster. If you get both of them, you're going to have to do some shuffling. But, that's something that Coach Beard has never shied away from. So, look, a lot of options for Texas Tech. I think there's possibly one or two other guys that is not really in the public light that we don't even know of yet. Coach Beard always has an ace in the hole, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with this roster and who they're able to add during this offseason, because they've already added some amazing talent. It's going to be an amazing season no matter what. And it's really interesting to see how they piece this really talented roster together. But that's going to do it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.